What's going on, garden nerds? Today I am going to talk about something very important, maybe the most important thing when it comes to planting and growing trees. Today I am talking about root flares. Yes, I'm talking about root flares. This is something I've wanted to make a video on for quite some time, and now you are seeing it. Make sure you watch all of this if you're growing any type of tree in your yard and you want it to thrive and survive for many years to come. All right, so why am I sitting here under this awesome, huge, mature eucalyptus tree? I am sitting under here because I want to show you what a root flare is. All right, so let me jump up here. What is a root flare? First of all, zoom in here. Let me show you. When you're in elementary school and you're drawing trees, how do you always draw a tree, right? Very simple. You have the trunk coming down and then it flares off. Trunk coming down and it flares off, right? And here's the tree. This is the root flare. This should not be buried. This needs to be exposed above ground. This needs to be dramatically exposed. Now let's come here in real life. Where's the root flare? Here's the trunk coming straight down. And now what happens? Whoa, it flares out. I can see this. These roots, this root flare should not be under the ground. It should be exposed. If you have a tree that has soil up to here so that all you can see is straight down and then soil, your tree is buried too deep and it's going to die. So what is the purpose of a root flare? What is it and why is it so important to the tree? So the trunk itself above the root flare is built for air exposure and bark protection. The roots below the flare are built to stay underground, exchanging oxygen and water through the soil. Additionally, the flare helps anchor the tree, spreading the stress and wind load outward into the root system. So when you bury the root flare, you're forcing it to live underground, and it's simply not made for that, and that's why your tree is going to die. Okay, now here are 6 reasons why burying the root flare too deep kills your tree. Number 1 is the oxygen to the roots get cut off. Again, the root flare is kind of the middleman, the middle ground between the above part of the tree and the below part of the tree. The root flare being exposed allows that oxygen to get down into the roots. Trees and roots need oxygen. Even underground, there is oxygen. The more oxygen, the more aerobic your soil is, the healthier all of your plants are going to be. The second reason is new roots grow where they shouldn't be. So here is a perfect example of an older, mature tree that can be affected still by being planted too deep. So if you come down here, you can see the trunk, it's nice and thick, and look what we have here. Here's the trunk, here's the root flare flaring off, and look what we have here. We have this girdling root. This is insane. This is very thick, at least 1 inch in diameter, and it is completely choking this root flare off. It's choking it to where it can't get nutrients. It's weakening it. So when a windstorm comes through, it's not anchored in by the root flare, and eventually it's going to be detrimental to the tree. So what I am going to do today is I'm going to cut this so that it stops choking out this root flare. In the video you saw of my client's tree, that root grew right over the root flare, and it was cutting it off. That's what happens when you bury the root flare too deep. The third thing is trunk rot sets in. When the tree is buried too deep, this should be getting oxygen. It should be clean. If not, and it's buried up to here, guess what? This is not dry, it's wet. It's like you're standing yourself barefoot in a bowl of water for days and months and years on end. After a while, your feet are gonna rot, they're gonna get fungus, all that stuff. Same thing is going to happen here because it's anaerobic. There's no oxygen. When there's no oxygen, the bad pathogens set in, all of that bad stuff sets in, and it rots your tree away. The fourth thing is hidden decline, right? A lot of people, they'll say this tree has looked great for 10, 15, even 20 years. But slowly but surely, just like that tree you just saw in that other video, the root flare starts to get cut off by girdling roots, and it gets cut off more and more and more. Now suddenly nutrients can't get to the tree, now suddenly water can't get to the tree, and now suddenly it's very weak because it's not anchored into the ground. And that leads me to the fifth point, is weak anchoring, right? So if you look around this tree, you can see we have root flares all around. All of these root flares are going into the ground and they're supporting and anchoring the tree, right? Imagine if none of this was here spreading out and anchoring the tree. Then when a huge windstorm comes through, it's like a stick with a huge cell on top, and that thing is going to fall over in the wind. So because you have this huge tree with all these leaves that are like a cell on top, you need an equal part root system underground that's going to anchor it into the ground. And the sixth reason is, guys, here in Phoenix, the heat makes it even worse. With a buried root flare, the heat, the lack of oxygen, the moisture, that is just a recipe for a very unhappy, rotting, diseased, and declining tree. All right, so a few things that you can do in 10 seconds to try to figure out if your tree is buried too deep. The first thing is just stand back 3 to 4 feet and look at the tree. Can you see the flare? If you can't see the flare and you just see a straight pole, it's buried too deep. Is the trunk bark wet and decaying and just looks kind of diseased? If so, more than likely the tree is buried too deep. Are there rocks and mulch piled up and touching the trunk? If so, your tree is probably buried too deep. Is your larger tree that's been in the ground 2, 3, 4, 5 years, does it still sway a lot when the wind comes through? When you shake it, is it not feel secure in the ground? If so, your tree is probably planted too deep. All right, so now you've noticed most of your trees are probably buried too deep in your yard. So what can you do? I have this tree here that is planted in my grass, okay? And I want to show you what I've done and what I'm continuing to do here to keep the root flare exposed. And mind you, I started planting trees before I knew any of this stuff. So there are a lot of trees in my yard that were planted too deep, and I've had to come and correct, and I'm continuing to correct and kind of dig it out. So if you get down here, a while ago, this tree was buried to right here, right? The grass was right up against it. You can see where it kind of changes. So what I did is I came in here and I slowly started to dig away from the trunk. First with a little hand shovel, then with some gloves, because you want to be very gentle and you don't want to hurt these. You want to hurt them the least amount as possible. But look right here, this is very interesting. It's been a while, but this was a girdling root. It started right here because it was looking for more oxygen, and that's what happens when these are buried. Again, like we talked about, these roots start coming out and they start girdling and circling the tree, and they carve into the main root flare. So that's what this started doing. And with time, it was going to cut off this root. So you want to get in here and start pulling things back. You can get water with some pressure, not too much pressure, because again, you don't want to hurt the roots, but you can get water and get the dirt and the soil and everything away. It works really well. So that's what I've started doing here. But guess what? I am going to expose these even more. Dramatically exposed is what you want to go. And if you see those small girdling roots, just go ahead and cut them. If they get really big, like I'm going to show you in just a minute, and you don't feel comfortable, call a certified arborist. They can come and help you. All right, so check out this video of a few weeks ago at a client's house, and this shows you even more what you can do when your tree is buried too deep. All right, so let's talk about when you get your new cool tree and you get it home. How deep should you plant it? How do you know? So I have this flamboyant yellow point sienna tree here. This came from a nursery. Most trees are going to be like this, right? So what a lot of people do is they dig the hole just as deep as the soil level here in the pot, and that's where they plant it. That's great that you're not digging the hole too deep, but you don't want to plant it level with where the soil is currently in the pot. And let me show you why. If you come in here real close, you can see most of the time when you bring a tree home from the nursery, it is already buried too deep. It's not the nursery's fault. That's just how they come when they're young. So what you want to do, this tree is buried too deep, right? Like, look at this. All you see is a straight pull. You see no flare, okay? And this is a young tree, so it's not gonna have a huge flare to begin with. But look what happens when we start digging away. Now, if I had just planted, let me put this back. If I had just planted this tree with the soil level of the pot, it would be planted too deep from the start. So you want to pull it back here until you start finding those main root flares, right? So look at this. Now I'm exposing some of these and you can see it's really starting to flare out here. So this is not the level in which we want to plant it in the ground. This is the level where we have these root flares. This is the level at which we want to plant it in the ground. And now consider this, when you dig a hole, even if you only dig it as deep as it needs to go, there's going to be some type of settling. So plant it this level, plus maybe even a little bit higher, because you always want to leave room for error. If you're gonna have to err on one side or the other, always err on the side of planting the tree too high versus too deep. You will always kill a tree by planting it too deep. You will never kill a tree by planting it too high. So always err on the side of too high. All right, so one thing that we talked about, but I want to specifically mention it, mulch volcanoes are bad. That is a recipe for disaster. Not only do we not want the soil and the dirt right up against the trunk, but we don't want to make what a lot of people do with a mulch volcano. Stop that. Okay, and then the other thing is we want our watering to match root flare health. We don't want to put the water right up next to the trunk of the tree. This is not where the feeder roots are. But if you step back out here, the feeder roots and the roots that take up water are at the drip line. What is the drip line? It's at the end of the tree canopy where the leaves stop. So the leaves stop right here, come straight down this area, all the way around the tree. All the way around the tree is where the feeder roots are and where the water roots are. So this is where we water. If you have automatic irrigation, put them out here. Or you can simply get a hose and put it on the slow drip here for a few days, move it over there for a few days, and let that water penetrate deeply into the ground. You don't want it up against the trunk, up against the root flare, because again, the root flare needs to be clean, it needs to be exposed, it needs to be dry. Don't water the root flare. All right, guys, so this is a very, very important video. I hope you're still here with me. I hope you've watched to the end. Go out now and look at your trees. Those three things. If you stand back and you don't see a flare, if the bark is decaying and everything, if there's mulch up against it, if the tree sways a lot in the wind, you have a tree that is buried too deep. Go and start gently digging out that tree, exposing that root flare dramatically. Expose it dramatically. You cannot do too much. Your trees are going to be happier. They're going to live longer. If they're fruit trees, they're going to produce more fruit. This is very, very important. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, please post them below. I'm happy to answer, and we'll see you in the next video.